I just finished my round 2 of Reykjavik Open, and today I was facing a 13-year-old kid from Sweden. And I was terrified because kids are terrifying in chess. Like, there's nobody scarier to play than a kid that has spent their whole morning preparing and that is super hungry and excited to beat you. Is that a saying in English, to be hungry, to beat someone? I don't know. But you know what I mean. Like, kids are terrifying in chess. So when I was playing today, my opponent called Arjen Banerjee, rated 1896, almost 1900, I knew that this could be a very tough game. So I think the toughest thing of everything was the fact that the round started today at 9 a.m. in the morning. And I am not a morning person. I have not been up at 9 a.m. in I don't know how long. So I thought, me playing chess at 9 a.m., how is this going to go? Well, it went the way that I'm going to show you. So I started the game by going d4, my favorite move, and he played d5 very quickly. I went c4, Queen's Gambit, and he went e6. So this is now the Queen's Gambit declined. Now I played knight c3, and he did this move a6. And this move is a little bit tricky because the idea of this is sometimes to take this pawn on c4 and then to go b5 and just kind of play on the queen side. So I decided to capture his pawn on d5, and after he took back, I just simply got my other knight out. So this was all very simple, and we were both playing really fast. And he went h6 here. I think with the idea that if knight f6, he wanted to stop me from developing my bishop over here. So he was playing this really fast, and I realized that he probably had prepared all of this, and that's what I'm saying. Like, kids, they prepare a lot. So I'm gonna be completely honest, this morning, I barely had time to prepare. I slept 3 hours last night because there's so many things to do. So I had a very little nap asleep. I had 3 croissants for breakfast. I had a big coffee, and I was sitting by the board, literally like this. I was so tired when I was sitting by the board. But he was full of energy, I felt like. So I played h6, I went bishop f4. I wanted to develop my bishop because I wanted to go e3, but I didn't want to lock in my bishop whilst doing so. So he played knight f6, I went e3, and then he played this move bishop d6 to develop the bishop. Now here, my instant reaction was bishop e5. But then I was like, okay, Anna, we need to think about this. Why do you want to go bishop e5? But I realized that this move, and it's actually the best move in the position. My mom was slightly suspicious of it, but it's the best move in this position. I realized that I really liked it because it was very annoying. And I always say this, in chess, you want to be annoying to your opponent. The more annoying chess player is the chess player that wins, right? So I was just trying to annoy him. And I thought this move was very annoying because I'm threatening to capture this knight. And then when you capture this back, then this pawn on d5 is hanging. That's the first threat that I have. The second thing is that I'm stopping him from developing his pieces because if he goes knight d7, well, then actually I can take on d6, and this pawn structure that he has now is going to be very bad. We can see that these pawns are now doubled, and they're just very isolated and unprotected. So I realized that this was just not something he could do, so I thought that this was a bit of an annoying move. So he played c6 just to defend the pawn, and I was expecting this. And I went bishop d3, developing my bishop. He castled, I castled, and he now has the problem that if he moves this knight, the bishop is hanging. But he also doesn't really want to take here, because after pawn takes, I'm going to have a very strong central pawn. So this is a bit of an annoying move, annoying position for him. So he ended up going bishop g4, pinning my knight. Now here, I was actually playing really fast. I had only spent 15 minutes at this point, which, if you know me, is very little. I was playing fast. I think because I was so tired, I was just basically playing on intuition. So bishop g4, I went h3, kicking away this bishop because I realized that if the bishop goes back, if for instance he goes bishop e6 or something, I can go queen b3, threaten this pawn, and now he cannot really play something like queen c7 to defend it because I just simply take on d6 and then the pawn is hanging. So he didn't do this. After h3, he played this move bishop h5, but I quickly realized that this was probably a mistake because I have this aggressive move g4 threatening the bishop, and when the bishop moves back, I am able to take and double up his pawns, and now not only does he have some really weak double pawns here, but also there's a big square on e6. So I was really happy with my position here, but I had to play very precise moves. So this position is like +2 for me in the evaluation, but I have to find the best move, and that is to go knight h4. Very important for me to not play something like queen d3, because then there is this move knight takes g4 as my knight is hanging. So I need to move this knight and threaten this pawn. This is the only move that will leave me with a big advantage. So knight h4, I'm threatening this pawn. There's really not a lot of ways of defending it. Like, I thought he was going to play g5, but then I have knight f5 forever, and this knight is going to be like the greatest knight of all time. Like, this knight is going to be like, if like chess pieces were food, this would be like the most amazing sour candy in the world, which is my favorite kind of candy. I'm also not saying this too loud because there's actually chess players in this room, and I don't really want them to hear me with my analogies, but this is like a good sour candy. Like, this is amazing. Or whatever your favorite candy is. So he ended up not going g5. Instead, he played king h7, which I immediately saw that this had to be like problematic because there's no way of defending this pawn after I attack it. So I went queen c2. I spent some time analyzing if queen here was better. There were a few pros and cons with both, but queen c2 I ended up doing, and now, I mean, I'm just threatening to take on g6. So this is like my threat. And the thing is that he cannot defend this pawn with like queen e8 because then the bishop is hanging. And if he first takes here to get rid of this, then I can take, yeah, actually, I think the best line here is for me to take like this, threatening this knight, and then when the knight goes somewhere, then I take here. Or I can even take here, knight takes g6, and then threaten both the rook and the bishop and threaten a bunch of discovery checks. So there's a lot of different things that I can do. But I realized that the only way for him to defend this pawn was to go knight e4. And this move he played pretty quickly. So the idea now is that he's threatening my knight. We can see that this position is very tactical, but he's right now threatening my knight, and I need to do something to defend it. So I was considering two options here. The first one was to actually take here on e4, with the idea that, and I think this is really pretty, with the idea that if bishop takes e5, there is knight takes g6, and if king takes, I have discovery checks. And well, I mean, if he goes here, it's going to be a checkmate, and this is just completely winning after queen f5 and taking here. So I was looking at this, but I analyzed that probably the best thing for him would be to just take here. After this and takes here and here, this would be a really good position for me, but I realized that this would maximum be something like +1 for me, because I'm a pawn up, I have a great position, but it's not completely crushing. So instead here, I played a move that I'm really proud of, and it's probably the move I'm the most proud of in the whole game, which is actually a brilliant move, and it's sacrificing the knight. Knight takes g6. Now the reason this is a brilliant is because after king takes knight, I have this move f3, threatening this knight on e4, and now, I mean, he almost has to go back to h7. He ended up not doing it. He took my bishop, but then I took this knight, and now if this bishop moves back, I actually am just checkmating him after e5. Like, this is going to end up being a checkmate after a little bit. So I was really proud of this, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, I felt a little bit like Tal, but like not Tal, but like, you know, as close to like Tal I can come in a chess game at my level. But I was feeling really proud. So rook takes f1, he ended up taking here in between, and then he just started running with the king. So I took this pawn with check, he moved his king. I thought this might be a little bit of a slight inaccuracy, but I took the bishop, and after takes, I did the second brilliant move of this game, knight takes d5. 2 brilliant moves in one game. So I took this pawn, and now the idea is that if queen takes, I actually have a checkmate, pretty much. I mean, he has to sacrifice the queen, so you cannot take. So he went knight c6, threatening this pawn, and I decided to simply sacrifice the pawn and go knight f4, as if he goes knight takes pawn, I have queen f5, and now if he defends it, I can just win a piece. And if he moves the knight, well, then actually my knight is just coming in, and I'm going to have a really good position. So he didn't take, he went queen g5, I pushed my pawn, he went a little bit, you know, desperate mode and went h5, and now I just offered a trade of queens, thinking that if we trade, I'm just gonna have the best endgame ever with 2 extra pawns that are passed, my pieces are so active, this would just be winning. So he ended up not trading, he went back, and then here, I spent a few minutes calculating, but I pretty much saw that this was a forced checkmate. So I was trying to figure out if it was a better checkmate through queen takes h5 check or knight here, but I realized that both were checkmate, so I just went queen takes h5, check, king went to g8, and after knight g6, there is nobody that can stop the checkmate on h8, and he resigned. And I was feeling really happy after the game because I didn't know if this was like as good of a game as I thought it was, but it actually was. I think my accuracy was around 96 or 97%. So it was almost a perfect game that I played, which I'm really proud of, but especially the fact that it was so tactical and it was so me. Like, I love tactical games like this. So I won my second round. I am right now probably gaining a few points of rating, and on 1 out of 2 points. Round number 3 of this tournament is going to start in literally 20 minutes. So I am going to run to get ready for the round, and I'll be publishing that recap as well. Once again, I'm streaming all my rounds on YouTube. So if you want to catch me live, you can check out my channel here on YouTube or on Twitch. I'll be posting the schedule in the description box down below. Thank you so much for following me on this journey, and let's win a lot of chess games. And let's try to get 2200. Okay, thank you so much for watching the video. I'll see you all in the next round. Wish me luck.